Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into a massive challenge that sits at the absolute heart of Web3 and blockchain tech. Look, for years, the big rallying cry of the decentralized space has been total transparency, right? We constantly hear about how distributed ledgers give us this unchangeable, completely public history of every single transaction ever made. And hey, mathematically, that is absolutely true. But here's the catch. There is a gigantic gulf between having a mountain of raw data and actually having actionable information. So today, we're going to unpack the Codatta protocol. It's a system that's specifically engineered to tackle this exact problem by turning that raw, completely unreadable blockchain data into actual, meaningful context.
Because there is a fundamental truth in Web3. Data without context is just noise. Seriously, let that sink in for a second, because it perfectly nails the core issue we're facing right now. We've built these incredibly complex networks, and they record every micro-action with absolute perfection. It's a flawless, permanent record. But a record of what? I mean, looking at a raw block explorer is literally like staring at the falling green code in the matrix when you don't know how to read it. You're just getting hit with this blinding stream of alphanumeric hashes, timestamps, gas fees. If we don't actually know what any of those millions of data points mean in the real world, they aren't helping us. They're just overwhelming us. It is literally just noise.
And that leads us to this really profound irony in the current landscape. Think about it. You can stare at mathematically perfect records and still understand absolutely nothing about what's actually happening. We throw a parade for this flawless on-chain visibility. And sure, we can see that, 10,000 tokens move from wallet A to wallet B in a matter of milliseconds. We see the routing, the timestamp, the exact computational cost. But what is it? Is it a normal payment to a vendor? Is it some malicious hack draining a liquidity pool? Or is it just a routine protocol upgrade? Without knowing the who or the why behind those addresses, we are basically flying blind. It'd be like trying to balance your checkbook, but instead of the names of the stores where you bought things, your bank statement just gives you these massive 50-digit routing numbers. You'd be totally lost.
Look, most systems out there right now are perfectly happy just exposing information. They do the heavy lifting, scrape the raw data from the blockchain, and just dump it onto a dashboard for you to stare at. They expose the event, but they completely fail to explain it. And that's only half the battle. What we actually need, what users, developers, and analysts are desperately begging for, are systems that can actually explain that information. It just isn't enough to prove that a transaction happened anymore. We need a translation layer that makes sense of that event in actual human terms. And that right there is exactly what the Codatta protocol was built to fix. It acts as its missing layer of data explanation. Now, bridging this gap is technically super difficult, mostly because blockchains are inherently designed to be pseudonymous and trustless, right? They don't natively care at all about human identities or business logic. So Codatta acts as that essential bridge across the divide. It goes right after that core flaw in current data systems, that incredibly frustrating gap between exposed raw records and human understanding. It exists specifically to give us that missing explanation, essentially turning a completely sterile database into a truly readable history of events.
Okay, so how does this actually work under the hood? Well, first, the protocol is constantly monitoring raw on-chain activity, just watching those relentless, unedited movements of tokens and smart contract calls happening all over the network. But then it does something super clever. It attaches verifiable metadata. Imagine a digital, completely tamper-proof tag getting securely pinned to a transaction that used to be completely anonymous. So now it confirms, hey, this specific contract belongs to a known decentralized exchange. Or it flags, watch out, this address belongs to a known scammer. It takes the raw code and cross-references it with authenticated real-world context. And just like that, those unreadable raw transactions become clear, actionable signals. Think about a standard wallet address before all this. Normally, it's just this 42-character alphanumeric hexadecimal string. It's totally random code that means absolutely zero to you and me. You couldn't memorize it if you tried, and you definitely can't just trust it at face value. But once Codatta processes it and slaps on that crucial metadata, that exact same address is fundamentally transformed. It suddenly becomes an identifiable, explainable, and trustworthy entity. You now know exactly who or what you're dealing with, whether that's a legit protocol, a normal service provider, or a highly risky contract. Having that context gives you the actual power to make informed, safe decisions.
And ultimately, this is how transparency becomes truly usable. We can talk until we're blue in the face about blockchain transparency and the revolutionary power of public ledgers. But if we can't actually interpret the data those ledgers are spitting out, that transparency is practically useless. It's basically an illusion. By attaching context and building a bridge between raw code and human understanding, Codatta takes these abstract mathematical ledgers and turns them into actionable intelligence. It's a huge shift in how we process decentralized information, which leaves us with one really essential question to ponder as we keep building out the future of the web. If transparency isn't usable, is it really transparent at all? Definitely something to chew on as you navigate your own data workflows. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.